Hello and welcome to Crumbs Doilies. Now here at Crumbs Doilies we love to make seasonal cupcakes, and at the moment we're just at the end of blackberry season, and if you live in Britain then you will know that blackberries have been in abundance this year. We've been really lucky, and if you've got a glut of them then this is the cupcake for you. It's apple and blackberry crumble cupcake, and it is so delicious, and it also uses my other favourite ingredient, which is apples. Now you can make this cupcake even if you don't have fresh blackberries or if it's out of season. Normally you can find frozen blackberries in the freezer section in your supermarket, or you can just replace the blackberries with another soft fruit like raspberries or blueberries and it'll still be just as delicious. But the first thing we're going to make is the really delicious crumble topping, because I think you'll agree that the best part of an apple crumble is the crumble itself. So this is going to be an oaty crumble to give it a little bit more texture, and it's really simple. So I've got a big bowl here with 100 grams of chopped cold butter. I'm going to add 150 grams of oats, 100 grams of demerara sugar, that's the nice kind of crunchy brown sugar, 50 grams of plain flour, and then 100 grams of golden syrup, or you can use corn syrup, you can even use honey if you want, but golden syrup's a really tasty one. I'm going to rub this all together with my hands, but because of the golden syrup it's going to be mega sticky, so I'm going to start things off with a wooden spoon just to kind of coat the butter and the golden syrup with all the dry ingredients so I don't get really sticky hands. And then once you've got the ball rolling, get rid of your spoon and get your hands in there. And I'm going to rub these together a bit like how I do when I make pastry, sort of between my fingertips. This is quite a lot of crumble. This is way more than we're going to need for these cupcakes, but like with a couple of other recipes where I do make too much of a certain thing, this is the kind of thing you can keep and use it for other stuff. Like I quite often put this on like yogurt or even ice cream, and it's really tasty. Now there isn't really any way to avoid getting very messy fingers unless you use gloves, which by all means you can, but when it's all really well mixed you then need to bake it. So I'm going to sprinkle these little nuggets, because it's quite sticky, I'm just going to sprinkle it onto a baking sheet which I've lined with baking paper. So when you're sprinkling it, try and make sure it's nice and even as much as you can. It will clump together, but try and separate any really big clumps so that you can bake this all evenly. And once you've finished sprinkling it out, it needs to be baked at 170 degrees C for about 16 minutes, and at 10 minutes you need to take it out and toss it all about so that it gets nice and even colour. Now it's time to get on with making the delicious apple sponge. Now, when you put fruit in sponges, it's really hard to keep the bake really nice and the crumb really nice because of all the moisture in the fruit. So I've got a little trick up my sleeve. So obviously apples are very juicy. I'm going to be using half of a Bramley apple, which is probably the equivalent of one Cox or Braeburn or even a Granny Smith. You want to use a nice tart juicy apple. So I've got half an apple here, and first things first I'm going to grate it coarsely. Oh, you probably didn't catch me grating the end of my thumb off, but I did do that, and so this plaster is because of that. But I've grated my apple, and now for my trick. So this thing here is called a potato ricer, and it is basically like a giant garlic press. And I find it's really useful when you're making fruity cupcakes where you want to separate the pulp from the fruit, to do that with my potato ricer. So I'm going to just put all my apple in there, and then in a separate bowl I'm going to squeeze. You can give these things quite a bit of welly to get as much juice out as possible, and the apple that's left, it will still have some appley flavour, but it just won't have all the juice, and the juice is what makes the sponge collapse. So now I've got my apple juice and my apple pulp separated. I'm just going to put that to one side because I don't need that until later, but the juice I'm going to take a tablespoon and a half out and put it in a little jug. And then to that I'm going to add a teaspoon of black treacle, and black treacle is a really English thing, and if you can't get hold of this you might be able to find molasses, which is quite similar. If you can not skip this bit you'll be really thanking me for it, because this has got such an intense flavour. It's a real dark, deep flavour, and even a teaspoon of it's going to have all the difference, so please use it if you can. So just a teaspoon of that, and then I'm going to mix it really well with the apple juice. And it's very sticky stuff, treacle, so I'm using a little whisk just to really help it incorporate with the apple juice, because you don't want to end up with a blob of it that doesn't come out at the end. So now that you've got all your fruity bits ready to go at the end, it's time to crack on with the cupcake batter. And I'm going to start with 130 grams of self-raising flour, which I'm going to put through a sieve. along with 100 grams of caster sugar and 25 grams of dark soft brown sugar. And then lastly, a quarter of a teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda. And I'm going to just push that through the sieve with a spatula, just because sometimes the brown sugar can be a little bit sticky. Next up, 125 grams of soft unsalted butter and 2 large free-range eggs. And lastly, all of that apple pulp that you squeezed out your juice from. And then you just need to mix that on a medium speed for about a minute. And once it's had a minute, you can turn it right down to the minimum speed and add your liquid that you prepared earlier. And turn the speed up and beat it for about 30 seconds. And that is ready. So now what you need to do is distribute it among 12 pre-lined cupcake cases, just using your spoons or ice cream scoop, whatever you like. And then you just need to bake those at 170 degrees C for 20 to 22 minutes. Now it is time for the blackberry bit, and if you're not familiar with blackberries, they are these juicy little fellas. And I'm going to be using them to make blackberry icing, Blackberry Buttercream, and I've actually already made some Blackberry Goo, and all I did there was put 400 grams of fresh blackberries, or you can use frozen blackberries if you like, along with 100 grams of caster sugar, and I just brought that to the boil, squished it about, simmered it for about 10-15 minutes until it was nice and thick, and then put it through a sieve until it becomes this lovely kind of goopy jam consistency. So that's ready to go, and now I'm going to start by beating some butter together. I've already got 150 grams of soft unsalted butter in my mixer, and I'm going to beat that for about 5 minutes until it's really pale and fluffy. That is looking good. So now it's time to put the icing sugar in, and I've already sifted it. I've got 340 grams. As usual, I'm going to put half in, give it a good beat, and then put the rest of it in and give it another good beat. It's had a few minutes beating. It's looking pretty good, but now it's time to make this beautiful buttercream, beautiful blackberry buttercream. And the great thing about blackberries is not only are they sweet and tangy, they also have this amazing pink colour when you add it to the buttercream. So I'm going to start with 3 tablespoons and see how I get on. Right, that looks so pretty and sweet and tangy, just like blackberries. So I'm just going to clear the decks, put this into a piping bag, and then get on with the next bit. Now it's time to assemble these guys, and there is one last important thing which I have made, and that is apple goo, or apple compote if you like. I've got some in a piping bag here, but how I made it was I chopped up a whole Bramley apple really finely, and then I added 1.5 teaspoons of cinnamon, 50 grams of dark brown sugar and 40 grams of butter, and then I brought it to the boil and let it simmer for about 10 minutes until it had gone like this. And I'm going to use that to just give the cakes an extra appley kick, so I'm going to make some room using, appropriately, an apple corer. And then I just need to fill all those holes with my apple compote. And once you've filled them, you can then top them with your Blackberry Buttercream. I'm going to finish them off with 1 whole blackberry and then some of my yummy Oaty crumble. And that is my finished apple and blackberry crumble cupcake, and it looks absolutely gorgeous with that pink colour, and I can't wait to eat it. So let's have a little go. The sponge is super, super soft and light, even with all that fruit in it. I'm getting a nice tangy kick from both the apple and the blackberry buttercream, and some crunchiness. Yum, that is a winner. Well, that's it. If you want to give these a go, then please do, and let me know how you get on using the hashtag Cupcake Jemma on Instagram and Twitter. And if you want to try these made by our team here at Crumbs Doilies, then they'll be available in our shop in Soho all weekend, which is a pretty cool treat. And if you love blackberries, then why not use this Blackberry Goo recipe for the summer fruit cupcake, which I did a while back. That's also a gluten-free recipe, so a lot of you asked me about gluten-free, so check that out. In the meantime, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, then please do so. I'll be back next week with another recipe, so I'll see you then. Bye!